key point underneath this is that the government of this country, which is now a Labour government, will work closely with whoever the people of the United States elect as their president in November, because this country and the US have a long-standing special relationship, and that will continue into the future. As our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has had meetings with both President Biden in the White House and with Donald Trump. He was over there recently and had a very useful and respectful dinner with Mr.
This channel not only feed your eyes with good movies, we also bring you the hottest and the newest trend around the globe. My darlings, sit tight and enjoy this one.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us this hour on the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up. Former US President Donald Trump takes a swipe at the UK, accusing the Labour Party of election interference. Giselle Pellico, the Frenchwoman whose husband is on trial for drugging and raping her, takes the stand. Plus, 11 people killed in a fuel truck explosion in Uganda. Let's begin the world today. Thanks for staying with us. The US election has now become the concern of the UK government, all thanks to former President Donald Trump and his recent accusations of election interference by the Labour Party. The Trump team accused the party of election interference as it sends volunteers to campaign for Harris in the US election. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has tried to downplay the row, saying Labour has long sent volunteers to US elections. The Trump campaign complaint cites media reports about meetings between Labour and the Harris campaign, as well as volunteering efforts by activists in the US. US law states foreign nationals cannot be paid to take part in campaign activity. The Trump campaign points to a LinkedIn post from Sophia Patel, Labour's head of operations, in which she said nearly 100 current and former staff members would be going to the US. The post said there were 10 spots available for anyone who wanted to join them, and that we will sort your housing, her words. In a statement announcing the fake complaints, the Trump campaign says the far-left Labour Party has inspired Kamala's dangerously liberal policies and rhetoric. The British government has spent time defending itself against these accusations by the Trump campaign. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said this morning Labour Party could do what it wants in its own time and with its own money.
Will the Deputy Prime Minister join me in applauding the brave Labour staff members who've travelled across the Atlantic to campaign against Donald Trump?
People in their own time often go and campaign, and that's what we've seen. It happens in all political parties. People go and campaign and they do what they want to do in their own time with their own money.
Melanie Ward.
Now, much earlier today, the UK Defence Secretary John Healey spoke to the BBC radio, saying Trump campaign has got this wrong. He says the campaigners are individual Labour Party members and that there is no organised deal on this. They're all volunteers. They pay their way. While Environment Secretary Steve Reid also denied any Labour involvement, saying it's not unusual for supporters of a party in one country to go up and campaign for a sister party in another.
It's up to private citizens how they use their time and their money, and it's not unusual for supporters of a party in one country to go and campaign for a sister party in another. It happens both ways round and across many, many countries. But none of this was organised or funded by the Labour Party itself. This is individual people making their own choices as they're free to do. Well, none of this was organised directly by the Labour Party. As I say, what people choose to do in their free time and whether she's part of a group linked to the Democrats is entirely up to her, and it's up to individuals if they want to use their holiday to go and campaign for a party, a sister party in another country. People are free to do that. It's not against the law here, it's not against the law in the United States, but it certainly wasn't organised by the Labour Party itself. Key point underneath this is that the government of this country, which is now a Labour government, will work closely with whoever the people of the United States elect as their president in November, because this country and the US have a long-standing special relationship, and that will continue into the future. As our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has had meetings with both President Biden in the White House and with Donald Trump. He was over there recently and had a very useful and respectful dinner with Mr. Trump. That relationship between the US and the UK will continue, whoever is elected president, but it really is up to individuals to choose how they spend their own money and their own time, and people going from one country to another to support a sister party is far from unusual.
And the former president quickly got back on the campaign trail at a rally in Greensboro, North Carolina. He questioned whether his Democratic rival, Vice President Kamala Harris, drank alcohol or was on drugs. He was referring to her performance at a recent interview. Trump described the vice president as stupid, his words, and then proceeded to question whether she had a substance abuse issue.
60 Minutes, she interviews, she was so bad. She gave an answer. This never happened to me. Why does it happen? She gave an answer that was so bad that they changed it. They took it out, threw it out. They didn't edit a little bit, take a word out. No. They took the entire, it was a long, stupid, she didn't know where the hell she was going. Does she drink? Is she on drugs? I don't know. I have no idea.
It's just an end to some of that interview that the vice president had recently. Kamala Harris said she hopes to end Trump's ideological and racial divisiveness that has characterized political discourse in the United States. Harris held a marginal 46% to 43% lead over the Republican candidates, according to a new poll. In the U.S., her lead in the 6-day poll, which closed on Monday, October 21st, differed little from her 45% to 42% advantage over Trump in the Reuters poll conducted a week earlier, reinforcing the view that the contest is extraordinarily tight with just 2 weeks left before the November 5 election. Both polls show Harris with a lead within the margin of error, with the latest poll showing her ahead just 2 percentage points when using unrounded figures.
As you sit here today, do you think the country is ready now for a woman and a woman of color to be president?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am saying that in terms of every walk of life of our country. I think part of what is important in this election is really not only turning the page, but closing the page and the chapter on an era that suggests that Americans are divided.
You've been reluctant to lean into, to talk about the historic nature of your candidacy on the campaign trail. Why is that?
Well, I'm clearly a woman. I don't need to point that out to anyone. The point that most people really care about is, can you do the job? And do you have a plan to actually focus on them?
There is a big gender gap in this race. Fewer men support you right now than they did President Biden. Some of your allies have suggested there's sexism at play. I wonder, do you think there is sexism at play here?
Let me just tell you something. You've come to my events, and you will see there are men and women at those events. So the experience that I am having is one in which it is clear that regardless of someone's gender, they want to know that their president has a plan to lower cost. Well, let me say this. We've got 2 weeks to go, and I'm very much grounded in the present in terms of the task at hand, and we will deal with election night and the days after as they come, and we have the resources and the expertise and the focus on that as well.
So you have teams ready to go? Is that what you're saying? Are you thinking about that as a possibility?
Of course. This is a person, Donald Trump, who tried to undo a free and fair election, who still denies the will of the people.
And on Tuesday, we saw the former U.S. President Barack Obama energizing the Harris Walls campaign in Detroit, Michigan, with a speech using the famous lines of U.S. rapper Eminem's hit Lose Yourself. Eminem introduced the former president and urged attendees to vote. The campaign says Obama will stay on the campaign trail in the coming days, where he is scheduled to appear at a concert and rally with rock legend Bruce Springsteen in Atlanta and in Philadelphia as part of a series of Get Out the Vote events for Harris's campaign in battleground states.
Hello, Detroit!
And to apologize, wanted to hear a little bit of what the former president had to say. But I want to bring in now Democratic Party County leader and global affairs analyst, Dr. Nelson Benjamin. He joins us from Detroit, Michigan. Nelson, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me in, Hamarachi. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and I hope you are as well. You've just come off the former president's campaign. You'll probably tell us more about what happened in there. The much I know is that he was rapping to Eminem's hit single, Lose Yourself.
Yeah, you're right. Former President Barack Obama is a very charitable leader. He's known to energize the youth. As we all know that Barack Obama led one of the best and most significant youth energized election in U.S. history, when he rose to power from nothing. So he was in Detroit yesterday as part of ongoing campaign to get out the vote for Kamala Harris, not only getting out the vote, but to get out the black male vote. Which statistics are shown so far so good are not trending in favor of Kamala Harris, due to so many things. So former president, 2 weeks ago was in Georgia, where he urged the black men, to go out to see this campaign as theirs. So he was in Detroit yesterday to join forces with all of black men, in order to get them to vote. As you know that in-person election started in Detroit on Saturday. Right now, over close to 2 million votes has already been turned in for mail-in ballot for Michigan. So it's going to be very hot, and black men are actually going to get this message by Barack Obama yesterday.
Yeah, but what is his message to the black voters? Because I've heard this before, that black voters are really not coming out in their numbers for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the issue with black men, it's more of black men are just kind of frustrated based on economic inequality, racial profiling, and of course, police brutality, as you remember the George Floyd scenario over time. So these are things that they expect the Kamala and Joe Biden presidency to address, but they felt this has not been addressed. Secondly, there is some section of black men, that felt that the tough on crime policy of the vice president when he was attorney general for California, was disproportionately affected black men. So these were some of the old grudges that some black men had. But so far, so good. Vice President Kamala Harris have been tailored messages, programs, to lift up black men, economically. For instance, there's a policy, one of his economic policy to lift black men out of poverty is to give $25,000 for first-time home buyers, and of course give $50,000 in terms of tax credit to startup businesses, and of course $6,000 for as a child tax credit, especially for black population. So these are some of the targeted economic campaigns that were aimed at addressing those economic inequalities. And of course, he has also promised to address the systemic racial profiling that have been affecting black men over time. Then also, one of those things he said, which has been gaining popularity among black men, is rescheduling of marijuana, reclassifying marijuana from class 1 schedule, to make it over the counter, which has been widely supported. For example, marijuana is approved as a recreational medicine in Michigan. So these are some of the targeted campaign, both economical, racial, and lifestyle policies that Kamala Harris is addressing, is bringing on board to help black men, black race, out of those systemic poverty over time.
Yeah, that is important, isn't it? But now there's been another development, and it's all thanks to the Trump campaign. They're accusing the UK government of election interference, accusing the Labour Party actually, as volunteers come from the UK to the US. What do you know about this? The movement of UK volunteers coming to help the Harris campaign?
Thank you so much. We all know all over the world that the former president, Donald Trump, is used to spreading falsehood, baseless accusation, and accusation that only him and his campaign people know. There have not been any statistic to support that, number one. And I can speak that the Harris war campaign have not been distracted, by these false proclamation by the former president. As we all know, months back, the former president was peddling rumor that the Asian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, were hitting people's cats and dogs, which we found out that they were actually baseless. So these are some of the gimmicks that the former president is raising, as a sign of defeat. Of course, he's actually losing the poll, and of course, he's trying to look for ways to distract the Democratic folk, but we are not going to be distracted as he's used to that. Secondly, talking about volunteers, it were, volunteers, irrespective of nationality, they are allowed. The US law only prohibits donations, spending money on campaign by foreign nationals on US election. However, unpaid volunteers are allowed, maybe to canvass or phone banking, which are normal. Both Republican and Democrats are always doing that. So the former president's accusation is not only false, but it's also worrisome because it could lead to some strained relationship with one of the United States' closest allies, talking about UK, as rightly shown in your previous clips. The UK Parliament, they are talking about it. So it is something that we all know that the former president have been, and that's why we are saying that this former president, the second coming back of Trump administration, is dangerous. And we are all going against that as electorate, as voters, to ensure that we prevent the second coming of Donald Trump.
Well, while we're still on the subject of election interference, tech billionaire Elon Musk announced he would be giving away $1 million to a registered voter every day until the election. How is this not a manipulation of the upcoming votes?
Thank you very much. Elon Musk is one of the super PAC billionaire, that comprises of 14 billionaires, that have been doing very well, doing everything they could do, to influence in whatever way they could do this election. Of course, we also know that this influence, the involvement of Elon Musk and the other billionaires is actually transactional with the former president. As you know that these were somehow arch enemies of Donald Trump in the first place. But sudden change to Donald Trump, of course, we have seen that it's very transactional.
You're watching Nolly Magic TV. My joy is to keep you updated with the latest gist. And your joy should be subscribing to this channel and giving this video a thumbs up, please.
Secondly, what he's actually saying, what he's actually doing is not actually vote buying based on Federal Electoral Commission. It's not vote buying. It's a way of indirectly influencing the election in terms of getting Donald Trump base out to vote. For example, they have promised money for people that sign the petitions. And what are the petitions? They want the petitions are support for the First Amendment, which allow freedom of speech, and of course support for the Second Amendment, which give right to gun rights. So these are some of the ways in which it's a strategic way to get out the supporters of Donald Trump. As you know, the election is going to come down to margin of votes. So he's just trying to mobilize the base, the Republican base, to go out and everything. Over the weekend, Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania, raised questions about this. And I think the Federal Electoral Commission are still going to investigate whether it's actually in form of vote buying or otherwise, because, as you know, that there's rules for election, donation, and of course, we know the influence of dark donation in US elections. So all these things are critically being watched, and I think in the coming period, we are going to know whether they actually translate to vote buying and to what extent have they been able to influence, electorate.
Yeah, that will be important. And I've seen the vice president become a bit more confident, in her interviews and a bit more specific when she's answering questions. I mean, the interview she had with Haley Jackson of the NBC, the one we played, she was, specific about answering the questions and about, what was it she wanted to get across. But, we also saw Hillary Clinton, who's the other, incidentally, Democratic female presidential candidate who also ran in the elections. She ran against Trump. And we also saw her being confident, in her campaigns. She did several interviews. She was, checked all the boxes, being the right candidate. But at the end of the day, it came down to the Electoral College. It was their votes that gave Trump the win in that election. So how is the Harris campaign ensuring that does not happen again?
Thank you so much. It was a very unfortunate incident, talking about 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost, amidst all qualifications, and of course, at first we need to look at, some of the reasons why he actually lost, and we need to understand the significance of the Electoral College vote. The Electoral College vote is actually designed to give the less populated states, significant power to actually influence the outcome of the election. It's just like a balancing system, making each state critical to the overall emergence of the president of the United States. So in 2016, Hillary Clinton did not campaign very well in traditionally blue wall states like Michigan, like Wisconsin, and part of Pennsylvania. These were critical swing states, that eventually, that Donald Trump eventually flipped to his favor. For example, in Michigan, Donald Trump won Hillary Clinton by over 10,000 votes, which was very, very critical. And in order to prevent that error from happening, as we saw in 2020 election, President Joe Biden campaigned very well in all those critical counting that could swing the votes, went down to the Electoral College, which is what we are doing right now, by going down deep down there. We knock on neighbors, we call on those suburban voters, the white collar voters, the workforce, the labor unions. These are critical electoral blocks that made up those Electoral College votes. And that is why our campaign, the Democratic campaign, has been target pro-worker, pro-people's elections. And, we are not taking that for granted. For example, Vice President Kamala Harris has been moving around those 7 swing states. He was here on Monday. Barack Obama was here yesterday. She's still coming to Michigan with Michelle Obama on Saturday. So the same thing happened to other critical states like Pennsylvania. We've been doing a lot of interviews with the Latino voters, with the Hispanic voters, with the Black voters, and even the white voters. It's very critical. And I tell you that based on what we are doing, the groundwork, the boots on ground, the targeted campaigns, and of course, the people-oriented messages of Kamala Harris, I'm very, very positive that come November 5th, Kamala Harris is going to be declared president of the United States.
Well, we have to have the election first, don't we? Thank you again, Nelson, Democratic Party county leader and global affairs analyst, for joining us on the program. We'll let you get back on the campaign trail with the Harris campaign.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Coming up after the break on The World Today. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken lands in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, as part of his 11th Mideast tour. Stay with us. Welcome back. Still in the United States, weeks after Hurricane Helen and Milton hit the state of Florida, there's been a surge of flesh-eating bacteria with 74 cases of Vibrio volcanicos in 2024 alone, equaling the set record in 2022 when Hurricane Ian and other devastating storms hit the state. In the meantime, the Pentagon press secretary says the National Guard has more than 1,000 troops and over 100 high water vehicles and helicopters from 3 states mobilized for the response and recovery following Hurricane Milton. He says there are about 270 people working 9 Army Corps of Engineers mission assignments, including temporary roof support, infrastructure assessment, debris control, flood response, and more. Air Force Major General Pat Ryder says the Defense Department continues to engage with interagency partners in support of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Staying with the hurricanes and the aftermath, the White House has taken on new action to address the devastation in North Carolina as a result of the most recent hurricanes. Residents in North Carolina are still suffering and without a basic necessities, food, even shelter, and even cash. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird spoke with the White House appointee to discuss the severity of the recovery challenges.
We thank you so much for joining us as the Deputy Administrator for FEMA. We know this is a very busy time in our country as a whole, but especially for those of you who have been on the front lines as we've had 2 major hurricanes that have been very devastating in the United States. Can you give us a little insight as to where we are today, what's happening, and what are some of the relief efforts and continued recovery efforts?
Well, again, thank you for having me. We remain decisively engaged across the entire 6 states for those that have been impacted by Hurricane Helene, and then subsequently down in Florida with Hurricane Milton. Each community, each state is in a very different place in their recovery. And so it just depends on which area that we are engaged with, each one of our state and local partners for an effective and resilient recovery. The most problematic area we see right now remains in North Carolina, in Western North Carolina, who was devastated by Hurricane Helene, but those disaster operations are ongoing. Across the entire 6 states, we have expended or obligated over $4.3 billion in federal funds, both for the response and the recovery. That also breaks down to about $861+ million going directly to disaster survivors as we assist them in their immediate and recovery, whether or not that's getting some serious needs met, such as getting food, medication, and those immediate needs, as well as temporary sheltering assistance and getting them registered for their individual journey to recovery.
You mentioned some of the immediate needs. We know that oftentimes financial needs become very apparent, especially for those who might work day-to-day jobs and get paid every single day. How are you all addressing some of the financial components? I know food you mentioned, but are they able to also get some sort of subsidy check in the meantime?
Yes, there are immediate commodities that are brought into the areas that are impacted, food, water, working with the Red Cross and other volunteer organizations to bring that type of assistance. We have encouraged people to immediately, as soon as they can, apply for FEMA assistance, which they can do through our FEMA app or going online at disasterassistance.gov. That will allow us to get them registered in the system, will also allow us to verify just a little bit of information to get them some upfront money of over $750 or so to meet those immediate needs in case they need some medicine, they need some immediate things that they need cash for. We can usually have that in their bank accounts if they have a bank account set up or a card, reloadable card set up within 24 hours so that we can meet those immediate needs. But it also opens the door to walking them through their individual journey to recovery. So whether or not that's housing needs, temporary sheltering assistance needs, that opens the door for the wider public assistance, individual assistance that they may need.
We know that rural communities oftentimes are the ones that suffer the most in these type of disasters. Tell us how you all are addressing those who are in communities that you can't walk to the closest store, and that oftentimes people are a bit concerned about leaving their properties.
Right. We have an obligation to meet people where they are. And so that means to get the resources to them and not be slow to need. There were some unique circumstances, particularly in Western North Carolina, but other areas as well, that we've had to go the extra mile. We have airlifted commodities and airlifted personnel into those communities to reach them where they are. The president authorized up to 1,000, active duty soldiers to assist the National Guard and state and FEMA partners to deliver commodities over that last mile, going through territories of cutting down trees and underbrush to reach people in their houses or where they may have been cut off. So we do a variety of things to meet people where they are.
And thank you so much. And lastly, before we go, tell us how long the recovery is expected to last before people can begin some sort of normalcy.
Well, we begin the response with recovery in mind. The reality of it is that recovery in these communities will take months and years to fully recover and to restore. And this isn't just work of FEMA alone. The entire federal family is being brought to bear, and we are coordinating with faith-based institutions, business communities to rebuild more resiliently and regrow those communities.
We thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for lifting up the work that people are doing to assist people in need.
And this happened earlier today in France. Supporters showering Frenchwoman Gisèle Pellicot, the victim of an alleged mass rape orchestrated by her husband, with applause and giving her flowers as she exited the courtroom today after taking the stand to testify in the trial. Pellicot was allegedly drugged and raped by dozens of men recruited by her husband, Dominique Pellicot. Her taking the stand follows a request from her legal team that she be given the chance to respond to the evidence and testimony that have been shared so far at the trial. She said that over the last few weeks, she had witnessed various wives, mothers, and sisters of the defendants take the stand and say that the accused were exceptional men. That's just who I had back home, she says. But a rapist is not just someone you meet in a dark car park late at night. He can also be found in the family among friends. Her words. Ms. Pellicot says she's completely destroyed and will have to rebuild herself back up again. She does not know if her whole life will be enough to understand. Pellicot insisted on a public trial in an attempt to expose her former husband and the 15 men he is accused of inviting to rape her in a small village in southern France. One of the men accused of taking part in the mass rape of Gisèle has given an interview to Reuters as the trial in Avignon shook the country and prompted some leading politicians to call for change. Dominique Pellicot has admitted to drugging his wife and recruiting dozens of men online to rape her while she was unconscious, and 50 men are facing trial alongside him. Gisèle appeared in court today to testify to the trial. Despite video evidence against them, at least 35 of the defendants have denied the rape charges, claiming that Dominique tricked them into believing they were taking part in a sex game or that Gisèle was feigning sleep. Many of the accused told the court they've been manipulated by Dominique, rejecting the blame on him. Only a few have admitted to raping Gisèle. Some have apologized. Welcome back. The bodies of victims of a fuel truck explosion near Uganda's capital, Kampala, have been retrieved as investigators collected evidence at the scene in Kigogwa town. The truck overturned after an accident and later exploded, killing at least 11 people, including 2 minors. 4 buildings housing 9 shops were destroyed in the blaze. The fuel tanker was traveling from Kampala to the northern city of Gulu, about 400 kilometers away when the accident occurred. The injured were rushed to a nearby health facility for treatment. The identities of those affected have not yet been established.
It was a single accident involving a fuel tanker which was moving on this Bombo Road. We have not yet ascertained whether the problem was the vehicle or the driver. It got an accident in this spot, and the fuel started oozing out from the tanker. It was unfortunate that our people went to start fetching the fuel. So, and fuel being flammable, highly flammable, it caught fire. Because there was one lady who was roasting her maize there. Then there are homesteads, like you see, shops. So with the amount of fuel which was flowing, we cannot this time know exactly the source of the fire.
British actor Idris Elba says he will relocate to Africa within the next decade as part of his plans to support the continent's movie industry. The 52-year-old star of the hit series The Wire is behind nascent projects to build a film studio on the Tanzanian island of Zanzibar, as well as one in the Ghanaian capital, Accra. Born in London, Elba, whose mother is from Ghana and father from Sierra Leone, has a strong attachment to Africa. He wants to leverage his star power to back its burgeoning film business, as he says it is vital that Africans get to tell their own stories. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa believes the World Trade Organization must be reformed. He was making the remark during the BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan. Mr. Ramaphosa called for emerging economies to intensify cooperation by launching common development of exports, industrial cooperation, and technology exchange.
The ability to change the full potential. Like most of the world, South Africa desires the smooth operation of supply chains, trade, tourism, and financial flows free from external influence in a multipolar world. Working together, the BRICS family has an important role in addressing the key challenges of the Global South in partnership with like-minded emerging market economies. We must intensify cooperation amongst BRICS members by launching common development programs in the fields of exports, industrial cooperation, and technology exchange. We have called for the recalibration of trade rules to enable industrialization. The WTO must be reformed.
Meanwhile, China's President Xi Jinping today urged BRICS countries to deepen financial and economic cooperation, saying the need for reform of the international financial architecture is becoming more urgent. President Xi, speaking at the summit, called for a de-escalation in the Ukrainian crisis and for no further expansion of the battlefield. He also called for a ceasefire in the conflict in Lebanon and in Gaza. As we end the program today, a painting by a humanoid robot artist called we'll just say Ida, will make history this month when it is sold by Sotheby's. The first time a humanoid robot will have its work sold by a major auction house. The work, called AI God, is a 7-foot-tall impressionistic portrait depicting the father of modern computing, Alan Turing. It is anticipated to fetch between $120,000 to $180,000. Ida robot, named after Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer, is the brainchild of Aidan Meller, who says she's intended to spark a conversation about how we interact with technology and artificial intelligence, and said this is a significant moment.
I think what is particularly remarkable about this event with Ada coming to Sotheby's is actually the picture AI God. We are absolutely in that transitional point of going from a human world where humans make all the decisions to a post-human world where the algorithms are starting to make all the decisions. And we are in that tipping point. And I think actually to highlight that with the ultimate expression, AI God, is a really good way of actually showing that significance as we transition. There have been many artists called non-artists, right from Matisse and Picasso and the like, and they seem to have fared history pretty well by being called a non-artist. Is it art? Well, that's up to the audience to decide. Our focus is an ethical arts project that explores the current beginning of the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Is it a tool that helps artists to be creative in a new way that wasn't possible before? Like, is it a new color on the color palette? I personally wouldn't want to see that we start to care about machine stories, because who cares what machines have to say? I care about human stories. I care about what humans have to say, and I think art is a way of expressing that. And so if technology can help you make that human connection, I'm all for it. I'm just worried that that doesn't really happen, that the storytelling stops, that magical human moment just becomes something that will be reduced down to pressing a button.
I wonder how long it took Ada to paint that picture. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.
Thank you for having stayed to the end of this video. You made me really happy. One more thing, click on the notification bell so anytime I do a video, you will be the first to be notified. See you on the next one.